Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how to quit your job the right way. So I've listed 7 ways to quit your job the right way, which basically means in a way where if you wanted your job back, you could go back and they would hire you again, or obviously there's other factors to that, like if you were a terrible employee, they probably wouldn't hire you back regardless of how you quit your job. But if you were a good employee and you just want to leave the right way, this video is for you. So the first thing I have is to review your organization's policy. So every organization and every position has its own policy for how you should quit your job, how you leave notice. So most places it's like a standard 2 weeks. Some places, depending on your position, you might have to give more of a notice. So some places might ask you to give a month's notice. So especially like in the counseling field, I know when I left one of my counseling jobs, I had to give, I think it was a month. It might have been 2 or 3 months notice. In my job before that, I gave several months. I gave like 6 months notice because it was a higher position. And so it really kind of depends, but that's why you have to like look at your employee handbook. Usually like your employee contract that you signed when you first started will have that kind of laid out. Most places have like a handbook or something that will list what those requirements are. You should also tie up loose ends. So if you especially are in a higher position like a management or executive position, you want to start tying up loose ends ahead of time. So for example, I know an organizational psychologist who's planning to retire in 2 years. So he's getting things in place and doing succession planning ahead of time before he like actually pieces out. But in the meantime, in between time, he is making sure that the organization is in a good place for his retirement. So you know, he's looking for his replacement. He's working with his team to try and figure out what kind of person would best fill that role. What are the organization's needs going forward the next 30 years? You know, who should they bring on or what should they look for? For somebody who's in a management position, who's got like a lot of projects, you want to make sure that your projects are in a good place to hand off to somebody else. And some managers start planning ahead of time before they even give their notice to try and figure out who will do what and try and figure that out in their heads. Have a conversation with your supervisor. So sometimes I've done this and sometimes I haven't. If I have a supervisor that I feel like is approachable and has time to talk, then I will talk. I did that once. I had a meeting with my supervisor and I just said, you know, this position really isn't for me. I love the organization, but this position is just not right for me. And so he knew before I gave like official notice, which is like the document that you print out and give to them, that I was leaving. And we were able to talk about like when would I be, you know, done, when would be an end date for me and things like that. So I encourage you to do that because it builds a better like trusting relationship between you and your supervisor. So if you ever did want to go back to that organization, or if you just wanted to use them as a reference even for another job in the future, or if you just want to, you know, leave in a friendly note, I highly suggest having a conversation with your supervisor. If your supervisor is not somebody that is approachable, or they're not like very good at having those conversations and you just think it would go really wrong, don't do it. That's my advice. Don't do it. You know, kind of have to, you know, your supervisor better than I do. You have to kind of like play it by ear to see what kind of supervisor they are and how you think that conversation would go. Give a typed out formal resignation. So that can be, I've seen people have resignation letters that were literally like 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be like a whole page, but it should be more than 2 sentences. Like in your resignation letter, I mean, there's a lot of templates online, and you can, find templates online for free. But basically what you want to do is make sure that you thank them for the experience. So, dear so-and-so, thank you for the experience or bringing me onto the team. I learned so much here for the last XYZ, or for the last X amount of years. Discuss briefly of the valuable experience with them, telling them, even if it wasn't a great job and you didn't like it at all, there's still something that you've learned. So just tell them it was a valuable learning experience for you. You greatly appreciate the time that they took to train you and bring you onto the team. Detail what your last day is. So that letter is important because it will tell them your last day is blah, blah, blah. And it should fall within the guidelines of, your policy at work. So if it's a month, then it should be a month from the day of that letter. If it's 2 weeks, it should be 2 weeks from the day of that letter being sent to them or given to them. Discuss that you'll help them with the transition, like by basically just saying, please let me know how I can help make sure that the next person has a smooth transition into the role, and tie up, loose ends or whatever. And then you can sign it with your name, your signature, or some people just type it out, their name. I highly suggest giving them a hard copy of it, but you can also email it to them. Obviously, in the world of remote work, you can email it to them. I've emailed resignation letters. I've printed them out and given it to to them. So you can do either of those things. Also, I don't know, some organizations may have a specific way that you have to send it to them. I don't know. I've never come across that, but that could be a thing. Now, after you give them your resignation, you want to aggressively tie up loose ends. So before you gave the resignation, you were passively tying up loose ends. Like, okay, I think I'm going to leave sometime this year or next year. Let me start, delegating things out to my team so I don't have as much, new, you wouldn't take on any new projects or big projects if you're planning to leave in a month. So, kind of that kind of thing. So when you're actually turned in your letter, then you can more aggressively tie up your loose ends because everybody knows you're leaving, or at least they should. Some workplaces, everybody doesn't know people are leaving, but I think that that's a mistake because people, especially on a team, need to know what is going on so that they can take on some of the work of the person that's leaving and be responsible for training the next person if the new person isn't hired by the time that person leaves. Finish out your days professionally. So don't be like Michael Scott in The Office where he's just, throwing, what was he throwing? Paper balls at people and drinking on his last day of work, or his last 2 weeks or whatever that was. You want to finish out professionally, make sure you leave a good taste in your supervisor's mouth, not like a bad taste in their mouth of how you were in your last 2 weeks. So just carry on like any other day, but also be, cognizant that the team that you're leaving is going to have to take on some of the work that you're leaving behind, and try and help lighten their load, especially if they were a good team and you enjoyed working with them, or even if they were a team that you didn't enjoy working with, you still don't want to, leave them with a bunch of mess, right? Don't slander your previous organization. So you don't want to go on social media and start talking badly about them. You don't want to talk about them badly in the community. If you didn't have a very positive experience, just say I didn't really have a positive experience, or it just wasn't for me. I've had people tell me that before when I've taken on roles at a place and I come across somebody who left that place and I ask them, hey, how did you like it there? And they're like, oh, it just wasn't for me. Usually that's an indication that it was terrible, but they just don't want to tell you because they're trying to be professional. So anyways, it just doesn't look right. What it does when you badmouth an organization on social media is it makes other organizations afraid to hire you, because it's if you don't like the place that you worked at, clearly you can't be professional about it, and we're not going, like they have the reputation to protect, because every place isn't going to be perfect, and some places do try to make it a good working environment. So if you're somebody who like, oh, this is a terrible place, don't go there, blah, 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 then they're probably going to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to hire this person. But at the same time, it's important to be honest with people who are thinking about going to that place. So you have to kind of be on a balance beam of like trying to figure out the professional way to tell somebody who's inquiring to you about, hey, you worked here, how was it? Versus like just completely, you know, letting loose. If you feel like you need to vent it to your spouse or your parents or, you know, a best friend, you know, somebody who is safe to vent to. That is like a go-to rule that I learned in college. Our RA told us, if you have a problem with your roommate, do not badmouth your roommate to other roommates or suite mates or anybody in the building or anybody on campus. Just badmouth them to your parents when you go home, or like, you know, a friend back at home that doesn't know the person. Like that's, you know, that's a good skill, and you can apply it to every situation, especially work. So anyways, those are my tips for how to quit a job the right way. I guarantee you, if you follow these rules, you will quit your job and not have any problems, as far as like people wanting to hire you back. If you're a good employee, they'll probably hire you back. And they'll say, oh, she worked, you know, until her last 2 weeks and she was fine. I have no problems with her, blah, blah, blah. So, or, you know, if you want to use them as a reference or whatever, or just to be professional, because your name will be out there in certain communities, and people, you know, people talk. So anyway, those are my tips on how to quit your job the right way. If you like this video, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, let me know. If you have like suggestions for more content or different ideas, let me know as well. All right, thanks. Bye.